Hi, my name is Phyllis Mintz. I'm the facilitator for Kings County. I replaced Linda Wansel, who you might remember. She retired in March, which was very soon after the beginning. So I'm an executive assistant district attorney in Kings County DA's office. To my right is Gail Damf. She is also an executive assistant district attorney, Kings County. She's the chief of our Vehicular Crimes Bureau. To her right is Kin Eng, who is executive assistant district attorney in charge of training. And then to his right is Hiram Bell, who is the supervising court attorney for the criminal court of Kings County. And to his right is Delia Hunley Adosa, who is our community representative. She is the president of the 88th Precinct Community Council. And missing today, we expected to have her, is Lisa Schreibersdorf, who is the executive director of Brooklyn Public Defender Services, but she has been very active in all our meetings. Everybody has been really active. And I'm just going to say a couple of words about the history of how we got to where we are at DWI. When the committee was formed, I believe there wasn't a specific goal yet, but Brooklyn is a very populous community, county, and we had to narrow it down to something that was manageable. So we couldn't do police stops. For one thing, we didn't have police on the committee. And eventually, we narrowed it down to, or they narrowed it down, because I wasn't on the committee at that time, to DWI stops, and looked at DWI from the point of stop to the point of, sentencing, and looking for a racial disparity. We did hire a statistician who was a professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, and he did statistical analysis of huge, massive amount of material, because we started out looking at all the stops in 2009. They couldn't examine every case because there just wasn't time or finances. But now I will hand it over to Gail, who will talk about the findings.
Hi, guys. Good. I'm actually very new to the task force, only the last couple of months. We have a lot of executive titles, but you don't just get there. Ken and I've been in the office about 22 years. I know, I don't look that old, but I am. I've spent my whole career in Brooklyn, and I am a prosecutor. It's what I do. I am very passionate about vehicular crimes. As I always say, I'm not just I get up and speak, but I am a prosecutor. I do trial cases all, during the year. I always try and stay active in it. We do a lot of community already education, which we'll talk about tomorrow. Some of the programs, we actually go out to high schools and try and educate the kids early on about what's going to happen to them if they go down this road. And obviously, in Brooklyn, our diversity is incredible. If you guys have been to our county, which is great, and the good part about it, we have cultural diversity, which makes it very good. What we did think, some of the reasons I got involved also is because some of our constraints and things, as you guys talked about the law, are statutory. And there are some things we just can't plead out, whether it's a misdemeanor. We looked mostly in the racial disparity, and again, the terms are here, it's tough for me, statistically significant and all that kind of stuff. I curse too, Rebecca, but I try not to. All my colleagues say, don't curse here, and I'm like, okay. It's a Brooklyn thing, I can't help it. But I'm going to be good. And one of the things we always do is you see up here, that's our lovely boss, Ms. Charles J. Hines, who is a wonderful man if you guys have ever met him. As I said, I've been there 22 years. I've raised my kids in that office, and this man is amazing to work for. He really does believe in innovative programs. We, like I said, we do a high school program we'll talk about tomorrow, but I went to him 15 years ago and said, boss, we want to start this. He's like, let's go. We have a lot of great programs in Brooklyn. We have a great website, and he's very, very committed. And one of the schools, let's say I talk about the schools that I go to, he actually comes to almost every single school once a week to speak to these kids and let them know. So we do always thank him because he really does a lot for us as well. So this was only 2009 cases, and I will tell you, and we'll talk, I guess, tomorrow a little bit. Since 2009, we really have made a lot of changes, and it had nothing to do with joining this committee. It was just that we did finally get a drug treatment court in Brooklyn, which we have been begging, and it started in the felony courts. Their volume is a lot less. I will tell you, in an average year of DWIs, we're probably taking in 2,500 arrests of DWIs alone. And so felonies a lot less, maybe, 70 to 100, a lot less. So doing it over there, they started, and their model's been great. So because we started that in 2010, the drug court, we've kind of changed our policies in criminal court a lot. We'll talk about some of those reforms tomorrow, but it's made a big difference. Let me see if I can. See, it won't work, but this is the greatest clip. You want the truth? You want the truth? Here's the truth. We never figured out what it was going to be, but what we really did find in a great study of our stuff is the racial disparity, which is significantly statistically, is really going to be about 1% of what we found here, which is pretty amazing. That we thought it would be more. But these are some of our demographics. I mean, just look at the amount of people we have. We have 2.5 million people, felony arrests for just 1 year, and we did 2010 just to sort of show you currently. But 36% of our population are foreign-born. We have 200 ethnic groups, which makes for some great food in Brooklyn if you come to Brooklyn, man. That's how we have great places to eat. But 115 languages are spoken. And I know, like I was talking to some people last night about how do you translate. We actually have translators in every language. We have Mandarin, Canton, we have Urdu, any language you could think of, which I know is not available to the other counties, but in DWI world, our defendants come from all over. We have Creole, they don't speak it. What we did years ago was put together tapes when they get arrested in their language, in their own language. So when they get into the DWI facility, our defendants are taken to a separate facility for arrest for DWIs. They see their language in their own language. And obviously, New York has 5 counties, 5 boroughs. All of our boroughs, we have a task force. We meet once or twice a month in the 5 boroughs to keep it consistent. That's really important. We started this about 4 years ago, this task force, and that's really helped of all the communities keeping it together. And part of our task force is developing. Queens also has an incredible amount of ethnic groups. And if you can't talk to them, somebody's saying, I think it was Andre, you have to hire like an interpreter, or somebody didn't have a Spanish interpreter. That's almost common. I mean, all of us, we actually speak Spanish. You have to kind of speak some of the languages, but to us, that's not even an issue. So, and in the court system, there is an interpreter at intake that will be able to talk to these people. So it really helps us also with risk factors and assessing some of the things where the other counties can't do, because we have those interpreters. Let me see. All right, these were our research questions. Were minority DWI offenders sentenced differently from white DWI offenders? And as they were talking about minorities, we're talking about in this study, Hispanic, black. They call them black. We were African American. We have a very big Caribbean culture, obviously in Brooklyn, and then there's an other. There's always that other category that I always have trouble understanding. But what we wanted to do is, since what is the magnitude, they did find there is some disparity. And then again, and most of it, and everybody's been talking about, is discretion. I mean, the problem, and it's not only the ADAs that have discretion, it's the judges. And if it's a top count, and we can object, and I don't know if you're understanding what I'm saying here, I can say to the judge, that's not what we want. He can say, I'm sorry, that's too bad. The guy's going in, or he's doing that. Your hands are tied on a lot of cases when it's a statutory charge, and that's on a lot of our misdemeanors. So, the director who we did all the research, I always say his name, Hunan, had put, Song, is he a professor at?
Yes. He's a PhD in criminal, John Jay.
He put together all our slides and had come in, and originally they had given him, 2,500 cases to look at, which again, like you said, Rebecca, was way too overwhelming. It was too much to look at. We were also looking at, according to race, when someone gets arrested, who refuses to blow, what's the age difference on the breathalyzer, because obviously if you refuse, for us the penalties are higher. If you blow, in our laws have changed. There's a new law we have on 1192.3 section. If you blow over a .18, our hands are tied. You can't plead that out to anything but a top count misdemeanor. So those are a lot of things where he looked at to see how high is the blow of somebody, what's the nature, more than one offense, all those kind of things. And this is what he defined racial disparity in sentencing as. After eliminating everything being the same, let's say 2 arrests, 2 blows, 2 accidents, the nature of everything, what he found is that there still remained a statistically significant disparity across racial groups. And that's going to be, wasn't in misdemeanors, it's in traffic infractions. For us, I don't know in other counties, obviously, but the 1192-3, the top charge of the DWI, driving while intoxicated, is a misdemeanor. The 1192-1, our lesser, is a traffic infraction, which we don't like, which means it's a violation. It's not even a B misdemeanor, it's actually a violation. So one is an A misdemeanor where you can do up to a year in jail. If it's 1192-3, a regular DWI arrest. But we have something called a traffic infraction, which is an 1192.1, which is a violation, max jail time 15 days. It is actually, when you check off a box, have you ever been convicted of a crime? It is not even a crime. A traffic infraction under the law is not a crime.
What is the difference in terms of the conduct? So one...
Same. One blow is a .08, which is above our per se. Everybody's 08, right? Mm-hmm. Right? On the level of... Yeah, this morning, well, I have a breathalyzer in my bag if you want me to test you. I carry a PBT in the car. Well, if you have teenagers, you do have a PBT, which I do.
Just don't refuse.
I do. Next time I'll do some HGN on you guys at the bar later. We can do some eye testing. I'll watch your pupils jump. This stuff is fun, though.
I gotta watch you.
Oh, yeah. Come to my trials. But the thing is about, with PowerPoints and trials, and I think you guys know that, unfortunately, juries are driven by what they see on TV, and if we don't show it to them in court anymore, I can't, like years ago, I'd walk around with posters. They don't care, you know. It's got to be up on a screen. It's got to be there for them to see it. With our Reconstruct, we have a lot more resources than you guys, obviously. We do hire reconstructionists. We do a lot of stuff. And so for us being able to use this kind of stuff is very important. This is what he did. He took the sample. We had the 2,500 originally, which was way too much. And I don't know, after a certain time, the cases get sealed. Is that what happens in other jurisdictions? Certain of our cases, after a certain amount of time, they're sealed and you're not allowed to look at them. Certain 1192-1 traffic infractions will get sealed, which means even though he wanted to look at a certain number of cases, he can't because they're sealed, they're away, and you'd have to get orders from the courts to open them. It's too many. So we changed the sample down to 1,992, and that was the data that we got from DCJS. And this is what they basically found, that in the sentencing of felony cases, that there were no disparities at all among any of the races, which I tend to think also is a big plus to the treatment court, by having the consistency of a court to handle all these defendants and put them in one place and have a judge and everybody look at this in a fair and honest way. As far as the sentencing of this is sentencing, because for us, they found no significant bail issues at arraignments, no significant charging issues, no racial disparity on any of those factors. And again, most of our defendants are ROR'd. And as part of Mr. Hines' policy, which he's believed, and I say, after executives, all of us, every couple of weeks, mine is every 6 weeks or so, every 4 to 6, we work arraignment shifts, so work a night shift and do arraignments. And it's actually kind of helpful to keep you in there and keep you in the mix and to see what's going on. The same reason I still try cases. You got to know what's going on out there and see what your jury pools are changing and like. And by doing arraignments, we can see, I tell you, most of, even the felonies get ROR'd. But in Kings County, most of our cases are now a marijuana ACD. I mean, we're dealing with a lot of low-level quality. The robberies have declined, those kind of things. But our judges don't set a lot of bail on misdemeanors. It's not statutorily. This is what we have found for misdemeanors, that black and Hispanics were more likely to receive sentences compared to white and others, and that's after trial. And again, we were not able to tell if this was a jury trial, a judge trial, was it a plea taken over our objection to a top count. Those are things that couldn't be accounted for as far as that. The plea policy is obviously set by the DA's office, but as you guys know, the judges, you have the power to do what you want when it comes to pleas. We can object all we want, but it's not going to, you know, it matters to some degree. Traffic infractions for us, if we're going to plead somebody out to a lesser case, which we're really trying to do, because we really believe, and as I said, after 22 years of doing this, nothing's, I believe things have changed, but it's still the same. There's 300 cases coming in every week. I mean, it's just a cog in the wheel. It just keeps turning, you know, it just doesn't stop. So I really believe if we can get these people in treatment, that's why we go out to the schools, if we can get them early and get them into treatment programs, giving them a misdemeanor is doing no good. Giving them, you know, the A misdemeanor so that maybe they can't work or do anything, that's not helping. So by giving a traffic infraction, which is not a violation, they can still get jobs, they can get bonded, they can do everything they want, we'll put additional sentences on that. So unfortunately, some of the times we're finding is that the traffic infractions, there could be a little bit discrepancy of who can get, because if you're going to get lowered to a traffic infraction, you're going to have to do more conditions. I don't know if you guys have you heard of the Scram bracelet? Secure remote monitoring from the ankle bracelet, like the Lindsay Lohan little thing. That she wore very nice with her black shoes, I saw. We do that. We do a lot of that kind of stuff. We have the interlock. Do you counties, everybody have the interlock device? We do a lot of that. But these are some of the things. These are our charts, which, and this is our, I'll say it, but I won't curse. A lot of us went into law school because we suck at math. I am one of those. And unfortunately, I had to go back and become an accident reconstructionist. So I was like, are you kidding me with these numbers? But then they said to me, listen, you don't have to do this stuff. You just have to know how to cross the guy. I'm like, good idea. That made me feel a lot better. So once you know what we're talking about, so basically you can see here we have, it's hard from the numbers, but we have white, black, Hispanic, and then other. We really don't have, in this one they found that they wound up being 954, the breakdown. It really wasn't significantly different, but just the analysis, you can have the charts in our thing, but I'm going to talk about the analysis. This is basically what they found on our disparities, that 99% of these cases were consistently sentenced, which I'm very proud of, and I think for our county, that's why I said, you want to hear the truth, we'll give you the truth. But the truth is good for us, and we feel good about it. We obviously, as you all know, there's definitely changes that can be made to make it better. But it is very, for me, I was pleased with this. This is basically what the researcher had found, and based on his conclusion of looking at everything, is that if everybody had been sentenced, if black and Hispanics were sentenced as the same as white defendants, that 24 more white people would have received the jail sentences, would have gotten, 24 of the 90 black and Hispanics would have been non-custodial. I don't know what to tell you about that. I disagree with some findings, I agree with some findings. I think a lot of times, again, like I told you, on misdemeanors our hands are tied, and a lot, and this is, I don't know in your counties, but we have a lot of people that blow way over the 1.8. We got a lot of 2.0s, 3.0s, 4.0s walking around out there, and especially if you're on your second or third DWI, the levels are very high.
I just wanted to point out that those custodial sentences were often in days. We're not talking about...
Yeah, no, we're talking maybe 15 days, 30 days. We're not talking years sentences, and there wasn't a lot of jail time. Okay, we're good. Basically, that was what they had found. If white defendants were incarcerated the same as black, 37 more whites would have received jail. Basically, what he said, again, there's no disparities in the sentence and arraignment charging and all that. And this is our lovely Brooklyn Bridge, which if you guys ever come to Brooklyn, it's a great walk across. And that's it for you guys. I'll show you some funny videos. This is a Minnesota one, so I'll show you that tomorrow. But it's Wisconsin. You saw that lady? Do you know her? That was a great 911 call.
So they live in Brooklyn.
Yeah, exactly. That's what everyone says. You know the DA's office? We actually have over what? How many employees, Ken, do we have?
About 1,200, 550 attorneys.
It's a lot of attorneys in one office, right? I know. You guys, that's your whole county. But anyway, thank you guys. Anybody have any questions for us?
Thank you, Brooklyn.
Thank you guys.
As you said, one of the challenges that Brooklyn faced early on was the police department refused to be a part of their task force. And so as a result, they couldn't focus on involving the police. As I've emphasized and re-emphasized, are you talking? So anyway, as I emphasize that this is a policy-based reform initiative, right? We can't change laws. We're not here to get new statutes enacted. We're trying to figure out how can we change business, change the way we do business so that policy decisions are done differently. So much in our criminal justice system is policy. right? It's no rule saying you have to arrest every single person who commits a crime. There's policy. There's no rule that says if you're only going 2 miles over the speed limit, the police officer won't arrest you. It's policy decisions. And so they were trying to focus on policy decisions that they actually could do something about. And it sounds like you guys are honing in on policy changes within the courts that should address the racial disparities that were identified by Dr. Snoop's study. It has been a long process because most of their work in the first year was trying to tackle this data. It was a huge task, and we all face that. Probably part of the growing pains of this project was figuring out how to find the data, and then once we find it, figuring out what to do with it, and what we can't do with it.
And most of our data is the old-fashioned way, going by hand. We are not computerized the way that, and I guess our computerization in the court system seems to be happening faster on the civil side than on the criminal side. Criminal side is still, you got to go downstairs to the clerk's office, pull the file, which complicates a lot of sometimes when we get civil practitioners coming in to do a criminal matter. They say, can't you just pull it up on the computer? We go, no, I've got to call you back because I've got to go 2 floors down to physically get the file to see what's inside.
The New Orleans folks are saying, you have a clerk's office with files?
Yeah.
The range across the country. And one of the things we found in all of our projects was getting that data, accessing it, and it's not automated. One of the things we'll talk about tomorrow is, regardless of the reform, we're going to have to automate up front. And we're going to have to be probably technical assistance. So we put in place a tracking mechanism so we're not in the position where we're going 17 files, 18 files. We don't want to do that. And so either adding on to any of our existing systems, so we'll figure out where it should be housed, whether it's Delgis or with the court, and who's going to keep track of it and manage that and produce these reports for us. We don't want to wait. We don't want to wait until after the project's underway and you have a report due, and then we figure out that we can't count how many people were diverted or how many people were put in the DUI court.
I do love the New York PD, so I will say we do have an incredible PD. And what Dr. Stone did find, though, even though they weren't helpful, he had gotten tons of stats of police arrests. And even though he did find that blacks and Hispanics were being stopped more, but his study had found that they had not been being arrested, and they weren't being charged. So although he found some disparity in the basis of the stop, there were no more additional arrests being made because of those stops.
So we didn't go into stop and frisk. We knew that it was going to be unsuccessful. And part of the reason why we went with DWEs is because DWEs, we have all the files in our office, and we have access to it, and that was a good way for us to actually start.
Except for the sealed files, which are even the DA's files
But you know
are
what?
sealed.
Even the sealed files, actually, because Lisa's was BDS, she actually signed a waiver and allowed us to actually unseal some files. So we were actually able to
No.
get some access.
No, we
So-
didn't.
No.
No, we
We
didn't.
didn't. We had to have a court order. We never got the
And
order.
they didn't do it?
No, we never got it.
Our chief administrative judge did not want to sign
They
off
didn't-
on.
I thought they signed? Really?
All right, so, New York, any questions for New York?
Yes.
Nope.
The sealing files business, is that a statewide or countywide policy?
It's a
Is that
state.
to allow the people to move on and not have these convictions haunt them?
Correct. It's a statewide. They figured you have not been as to an infraction. It's not. We don't feel an infraction is a crime. So that is again. So
That's
for
sealed.
purposes of that sealed. For purposes of jobs, everything now is to even become a janitor. Let's face it. In a high school or elementary school, every job now does a background check, and that's becoming. And I think that's going to be another issue.
Do those checks access these sealed files?
No.
They're not in their existence?
Okay,
Also the cases that are dismissed before, dismissed or their acquittals, dismissed before arraignment or for one reason or another after arraignment or end up in an acquittal. All those cases were sealed.
What about a conviction for the DUI or the lesser?
The lesser one will not,
Was it counted
eventually
prior
will
for
get sealed.
subsequent offenses?
Not if it gets sealed, not 1192, not the traffic infraction, no.
But that would not be a DUI conviction, then it would be something lesser.
Traffic infraction.
It would be trafficking. If it's a violation, it's equivalent to like a 240-20, which is like a discount.
Disorderly conduct.
It would be
Even
sealed.
driving, if it's not driving while intoxicated or
If
driving.
it doesn't fall above a certain
We're
amount,
getting a little guys talk. Because I want to focus on the disparity, the racial disparity, right? The reason why the task force was formed and the reason why the study was done was to identify racial disparities. There were lots of things that you kind of, although you resisted developing a working hypothesis, your actual working hypothesis going in was that at different points in the DUI adjudication process, that there would be racial disparities. There were places where there were none. He found that there were none. But the one place where he did find it was in sentencing. And African Americans were sentenced to a higher sentence for low-level DUI offenses.
They were more likely to be sentenced to some time, but then and so were Hispanic, Americans. But the white Americans were more likely to get a fine.
So that will be the focus as going forward. How do we deal with that number? And you guys have a proposal for an approach on how you might want to deal with it.
Thanks for that excellent presentation. And Cynthia mentioned that new policy project management project. So I'm just kind of getting oriented to the somebody if I say something that's like way off base, please hope you guys can bear with me here. But when looking at when you were talking about the disparities issue, so it sounds like for the misdemeanor, the low-level offenses, there's more discretion, I think, than would be with the felony offenses. Like it seems like if it's a felony, then it's kind of clear cut. You're going to get sentenced, and I don't know, it's not like that. Okay.
No.
In our felonies we have a lot of treatment programs. With our misdemeanors, your hands are tied more because of the statute. It's more statutory with misdemeanors. Even though the felonies there's a lot more you can plead down on a felony level. Your hands are more tied when you have one charge, that's it. And you can't really plead it down. That's pretty much why.
Other questions for New York?
I was just trying to understand where the discretionary between the traffic violation versus the charge actually happens. Does it happen on the street with the cop?
No.
Does it happen in the DA's office? And
Try and have cops have no discretion in these cases, except once they bring them into us, they're done. Except for coming to trial and testifying. Other than that, we charge. It's our decision. It's our charges that go forward. The plea policy is, I'm the executive. It's set by me, and Mr. Hines obviously. And over the years, when it's an 08, it depends on how high you blow. And no aggravating factors, no accident, no physical injury to people. What am I going to do to give this person a lower plea? Is it a checkpoint? Are they sleeping in a car? Those are the variables I'm looking at whether they're getting a traffic infraction. That's what changes it for me. The level of blow, severity of offense, and whether they've committed any priors, whether either DWI or robbery. What's their record like? That's what will make it come down from a misdemeanor to a traffic infraction.
So there's two levels of discretion. There's the discretion in the prosecutor's office about whether to charge and what to charge.
We always charge top count. We always start off with the 11. I've never seen 11 like a traffic infraction commit by itself. You always have the top count.
But it's your discretion as to whether to do that. That's your policy to charge the top.
They will charge
It's a policy.
they tend to charge the top count and then work their way down.
You can't really
If
charge
it meets the criteria for the elements, then we would charge the top count, and then from there, we would decide on, based on all these other factors that Gail mentioned, on what we could give this person.
But that's not dictated by statute.
Well, if the person blows a .08, it's dictated, we have to charge them with 11A. We have to charge them with a certain, per se, a level of intoxication. If they blow a certain level, I have to charge them with a higher. That's dictated by statute. If we choose not to charge them with doing, that would be disparity. Why would we charge one guy over the other guy? Everybody's got to be charged the same way.
I guess what I'm saying is there are two levels of discretion going on. There's the decision by your office, pursuant to your policies, as to what to charge and whether to charge. And then there's decision by the judge in terms of what sentence will be imposed on a person who's been convicted. So is that what you're saying?
Well, it was the question that you asked earlier. You said, what's the difference when you were still presenting? Cynthia asked, what's the difference between the traffic versus the misdemeanor? And you were saying that on the breathalyzer, it's the same.
No.
Okay, so
If a person blows a 1.9, I can't give them a traffic infraction. By law, the statute specifically says they cannot plead to anything but a misdemeanor.
but what's the threshold?
For me, under the one,
The threshold is
1.2,
decided by you or is it decided statutorily?
it's decided by five boroughs in
all of us got together and decided what would be the best, since it's an '08 now.
Policy.
It's policy
Yeah.
of what, that's what it is. Our hands aren't tied that way. When it's under the 0.18 level, our hands aren't tied. So that's all policy in all the 5 counties.
Everything from .08, from,
0.18 down
okay.
can possibly a policy decision. Anything above 0.18, our hands are more tied statutorily.
Other questions for New York? Thank you guys for a powerful presentation.